So today's topic is a utilitarian approach towards environmental sociology, a case study based on the Sriniketan project by Rabindranath Tagore and his son Rathindranath Tagore. So first we will go through the objectives of the study. The first objective is understanding of the developmental programs of the pre-independence era. Second is the understanding the different objectives behind the formation of Sriniketan, the development and establishment of Sriniketan, its activities and its special features, and lastly, the significance of this initiative and the revival of that spirit. So firstly, we need to understand the meaning of the utilitarian approach. The dictionary meaning of utilitarian is that something that is designed to be useful or practical rather than being attractive. Here we will discuss about one of the lesser known projects of Rabindranath Tagore and the great role he played in the improvement of the socio-environmental conditions of rural Bengal, the Sriniketan project. But before edging into the main topic, we need to know a little bit about the developmental programs of the pre-independence era. The Sriniketan project was not the only one. There were many other programs of this sort, and also why and how they were designated and for whom they were targeted for. Over a period of 70 years, number of rural development projects and experiments were carried out in India. Long before the introduction of the government-managed extension system at the national level in 1952, there had been sporadic attempts in developing the rural life in India. So the patterns of these extension efforts, firstly, there were attempts by some benevolent people and private agencies to improve rural life. And secondly, attempts were made at a government level to initiate some projects to solve the pressing problems in agriculture. When these experiments were conducted, there existed certain conditions like the agriculture was the primary occupation of a large percentage of the population. Extremely low purchasing power prevailed, lack of application of science and technologies, lack of understanding about the natural resources, especially the flora and fauna of that region, and their commercial usage. There were also lack of socio-economic organizations, etc. These realities are to be remembered before understanding the past rural developmental works. When these experiments were conducted, India was very much under the colonial rule of the British. But there were some basic demerits of these developmental programs. So let's enlist some of them. Most of the efforts that were made were based on individual initiative. Like for example, here we are talking about the initiative by Shri Rabindra Tagore. The government backing and financing was not present. All the attempts were isolated, discrete, uneven, and discontinuous. Staff were mostly inexperienced and untrained. Plans and programs were ill-defined and unbalanced. There was a lot of need for proper methods. Skills for approach were not realized. No evaluation was carried out, hence the results were not clearly known. Association and coordination, other development departments were very limited. Involvement of the people in planning and execution, that is, finding out the problems and their solutions, was very, very limited. Now, we will completely learn about the Sriniketan project of 1914. Rabindranath Tagore, as we know, wanted to develop a center to extend his ideas on education in a rural setting. In 1914, he established a rural reconstruction center or institute at Sriniketan involving the youth of a group of 8 villages. It maintained a demonstration farm, a dairy and poultry unit, an outdoor clinic, and a department of cottage industries and a village school. These agencies were to treat the village and the village people as their laboratory to identify the problems and test their own ideas on them. The villages were expected to approach these agencies through the village workers who stayed with them and worked with them, and they together would obtain the solution to the more pressing problems they were having. These social workers lived in the villages, as I mentioned, and worked with the people. At Sriniketan Center, agriculture, dairy, and poultry were the foremost activities. The scheme of land development, tree plantations were given due importance. Experiments on paddy, sugarcane, and cotton were undertaken. Improved seeds, vegetable seedlings, fruit grafts, and saplings were distributed. New breeds of cattle were also introduced. Local artisans were trained in cottage industries. Despite of so many features of Sriniketan, there were mainly two drawbacks of the whole system. This institute could not get any support or help from the government, which is a very important drawback. And secondly, it could not do the research work, and hence the programs remained limited to the only 8 villages they were working with at the beginning. The emergence of Sriniketan as a rural reconstruction center. Over a century ago, Rabindranath Tagore, as a reaction to the colonial system of education, felt that there was a need for non-conventional and integral system of education. To give shape to his ideas, as we talked about in the earlier lecture, he founded Vishwabharati, which had mainly 2 centers, the Shantiniketan and the Sriniketan. But both of these centers had very different objectives and programs. The Institute of Rural Reconstruction, or the IRR, was founded in 1922 at Shurul, at a distance of about 3 kilometers from Shantiniketan. It was formally inaugurated on February 6, 1922, with Leonard Elmhurst as its first director. Thus, the second but the contiguous campus of Vishwabharati came to be located at a site which assumed the name of Sriniketan. The chief objective was to help villages solve their own problems instead of a solution being imposed on them from outside, because outside imposition will never understand the deep-rooted problems of the villages and the village itself. So now we will learn about the structure of Sriniketan. Sriniketan, as we talked about, focused on agriculture and rural development with the cooperative efforts of the villagers themselves, and its aim was to develop a better life for the rural people of India by educating them to be self-reliant, and encouraged the revival of the village arts and crafts. In consonance with these ideas about reconstruction of village life, a new type of school, meant mainly for the children of the neighboring villages, would eventually bring the offering of their acquired knowledge for the welfare of the village community, and was also conceived. So this school was named Shiksha Shastra and was started in Shantiniketan in 1924, but later on was shifted to Sriniketan in the year of 1927. The Lok Shiksha Samsad, an organization for the propagation of non-formal education amongst those who had no access to the usual educational opportunities, was also started in 1936. The Shiksha Charcha for training village school teachers followed next year. So, the structure of Sriniketan had mainly 3 tiers. The Shiksha Shastra would teach the village kids whereas the Lok Shiksha Samsad would teach the people who did not have access to formal education in their prior lives. And lastly, the Shiksha Charcha would teach the school teachers so that there is a continuous development. So now that we have learned about the basic structure of Sriniketan, let's go for a quiz. When was Shiksha Shastra moved to Sriniketan? So your options are option A 1911, option B 1904, option C 1927 and option D 1920. And yes, the correct answer is option C 1927. Tagore's Village Reconstruction Charter at Pabna. As we all know, Tagore's ideas were way ahead of his time. He thought about topics and concerns that were very advanced for his time. In 1906, Tagore released a 15-point village reconstruction charter in Pabna, which is now situated in Bangladesh. This document makes clear that making village autonomous was amongst the chief concerns. It was necessary to use indigenously made goods. Further, all the village disputes had to be settled within through a process of village arbitration. A community grain bank was necessary to guard against the famines. In a gesture towards the necessity of women's autonomy, the charter asks the housewife to be trained in a trade that could also enhance the family's income. Some of Tagore's thoughts and concerns were generally shared by reform-minded intellectuals and government officials. Science and history had to be taught in village schools, and demographic data had to be compiled meticulously for every village. Many of his concerns were, however, very unique. His charter, for instance, stressed the need for building communal harmony and asked the essence of all religions to be taught in the village schools. The IRR was founded on 7 acres of land that Tagore bought near Shantiniketan in 1912. Establishment of Sriniketan, the Institute of Rural Reconstruction. So as we talked about this before, Sriniketan was Tagore's one of the lesser known projects. He encouraged his son Rathindranath Tagore, his brother-in-law and a friend's son to study agriculture and dairy farming at the University of Illinois, Urbana, USA. The three of them came down with malaria at Sriniketan upon their return and could not work there. Tagore later invited Leonard Elmhurst, an Englishman who had studied agricultural economics at Cornell University, USA, to help him build the IRR. Elmhurst did much of the founding work of IRR between 1921 to 1923. He helped get an American philanthropist to extend financial support for Sriniketan. At his request, his Quaker friends in the US sent a doctor who worked for 3 years to control the malaria in the villages nearby. Idealists from far and near were involved in the work at Sriniketan. The work divisions in the Institute of Rural Reconstruction. The education department included a school for boys above 8 from all castes and a school for training teachers in music, agriculture and hygiene. Both the students and the teachers had to learn the village crafts. The agriculture department did experiments to check if new crops could be grown locally and held demonstrations of their work for the local farmers. It also tried to promote modern animal husbandry. In order to help supplement the local incomes, the industries department introduced the new cottage industries. The village welfare department, whose work covered 15 villages, focused on the issues of road, tank and school maintenance and also ran a circulating library. a weavers' cooperative was founded in the mid-1930s. Picnics, games, theatres and socio-religious activities were also organized so as to maintain the combination of work with joy. Old festivals were revived and new festivals were introduced, such as the Brikhoropon, which is the tree planting festival, and also the Navanna, which is the new rice festival, which were inaugurated. These festivals are celebrated still today. Now let's talk about Tagore as a social reformer. To be a complete man was the concept of Tagore's education. He advocated an open education system which would be environment friendly, devoid of all sorts of stringent rules and regulations. The Brahmacharya Vidyalaya in Shantiniketan was the manifestation of his ideas. Tagore felt the need for a separate school for the village boys. He could not forget that after all, he belonged to a people, the great majority of whom lived in villages, in poverty and ignorance, neglected by the small minority in towns, whom they fed with the toil of their hands. This led the poet to set up Shikha Shastra in 1924 in Sriniketan as a residential school for the village boys from the neighborhood. Its aim was to give an all-round training to the boys, so that after completion of the training, they could go back to their respective villages and carry on the work of rural reconstruction together with the trade that they had learned. Mahatma Gandhi's visit to Sriniketan was very instrumental in the light of the evolution of Shiksha Shastra. Tagore's chief aim was to formulate a kind of education in which the villagers themselves would play the key role. He wrote, "I am therefore all the more keen that Shiksha Shastra would justify the ideal I have entrusted in it and should represent the most important function of Sriniketan in helping the students for the attainment of manhood, complete in all its various aspects. Our people should need more than anything else a real scientific training that could inspire in them the courage of experiment and initiative of mind that we lack as a nation." Revival of the spirit of Sriniketan. Tagore realized that the importance of modern science in agricultural practices. He wanted the agricultural farming centers to be modernized and the farmers be given proper scientific training. Dr. Swaminathan, noted agricultural scientist, had recognized the importance of Tagore's concepts even in the recent times. Tagore visualized the role of Sriniketan as a center where every scholar would become an entrepreneur. The cottage industries of Shantiniketan. The small-scale cottage industries and handicraft items of Sriniketan, identified as special ethnic and traditional products, recognized nationally and even internationally with very high esteem. The students of Tagore's Art and Craft Center at Sriniketan and the artists of Kala Bhavan are known for their extraordinary skill and craftsmanship. The surrounding part of the rural economy at this region is basically thriving on plural economy, sometimes contributing to seasonal sustenance of the village families. There are several means by which these skill and artistry pass through generations and people learn to earn for their own families. Marketing of the products of Sriniketan. The products of Sriniketan fortunately earned reputation not only in the local and national markets, emporiums, shops and exhibitions, but they are also exported outside to attract a special focus on ladies and gents' fashion statements. Some of the latest of such organized marketing find expressions through Bongo Mela, Bongo Sammelan held each year in United States, the Poush Mela and the Magh Mela at Shantiniketan and Sriniketan, and also the Bongo Sangskriti Mela at the Kolkata pavilions. Besides Delhi, Haat, Kolkata bazaars and all such textile outlets of the cities like Calcutta boast these traditional clothings enriched with the Katha stitch designs. Freelance sellers are also in the market with special stock and price offering. While the Katha stitch occupies the center stage of Sriniketan's sustainable economy, there are many more types of arts that are done by these people. The leather goods and handicrafts are equally adorable, and the tourists visiting Shantiniketan and Sriniketan never miss out on the venue called Amar Kutir that has the leather products, dokra items, cane items, jute products, and batik accessories, which are, not to speak of the Katha again, are on massive display and have become an eye-catching sight. Terracotta is also another speciality of the region, the marvel of rural art. It is a marvel how the rural artisans can excel to the standard of art and perfection so that the price of the articles may seem to be invaluable. The thermocol Durga, Ganesha, replica of temples of repute exhibit amazing signs of excellence and signatures of expertise. The tribals and the Adivashis and the Santals of the village tend to depend mainly on agriculture and agri-horticulture. Last but not the least, to speak of the traditional village haats that are held on the weekend to attract tourists and shoppers and travelers as well. The ethnic traditional ornaments made out of fruits, floral seeds are really worth the modern tokens of ethnic costume items. The items attracts the women folk who style themselves on the rustic look of the tribal ethnic fashion. And now, it's the time for another quiz. The artists of Dash are known for their extraordinary skill and craftsmanship. A. Kala Bhavan, B. Vidya Bhavan, C. the Raj Bhavan, and D. the Gandhi Bhavan. And yes, the correct answer is option A, the Kala Bhavan. And finally, we will summarize the learnings of today. We learned about the pre-independence developmental programs of India where they targeted the rural development, Tagore's project of Sriniketan and how he skillfully planned the development of the 8 villages under this project. We also learn about the merits and the demerits of the project. And finally, we discovered how it skillfully led to an overall socio-environmental improvement in the rural Bengal at large. Thank you.